Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Professor Sides, and this is Principles of Microeconomics, Chapter 5, Elasticity and its Application. This segment of the lecture is probably the most technical aspect of this chapter. It is computing or calculating price elasticity of demand. When we calculate the price elasticity of demand, again, this is a mathematical computation, and in order for us to get it, we need to know the various what the variables are. Excuse me, let me go back here. We need to go and figure out what the variables are. In order to find the price elasticity of demand, which is on your left, we need to know what the percentage change in the quantity demand is, and or we also need to know the percentage change in price. We will generally be given, almost always be given, the change in price, and from there we can figure out what the change in demand is. And if we know these two aspects, then we can eventually calculate and find the price elasticity of demand. If, however, as with most math problems, if you know what the price elasticity of demand is and you're given the percentage change in price, you can figure out what the percentage change in quantity is. And likewise, if you know what price elasticity of demand is and you know what the percentage change in quantity demand is, then you can figure out what the percentage change in price is. But for simplicity's sake, in most instances, when you're given a scenario, you will be given price changes and quantity. You'll be given price amounts and quantity amounts. So then you would first need to figure out what the percentage change is in the amounts, figure out what the percentage change in the price, and once you have those two, then you can figure out the price elasticity of demand. Again, you will generally be given two sets of prices, two sets of quantity demands. You will determine what the percentage change is in both and then divide that out to get the price elasticity of demand. Now, let me tell you about price elasticity of demand. Remember, in the first lecture, I told you that it is about measuring the qualitative and the quantitative. Well, if we are looking at the qualitative and the quantitative, if we're looking at the qualitative and the quantitative, when we do the qualitative, remember we said positive or negative. Is it a positive change or a negative change? And it depends upon whether it's the buyer or the seller. Where we get the positive and negative is in when we divide out the percentage change. So when we take the percentage change in quantity demand divided by the percentage change in price, if that number is negative, if it's a negative number, then we know that it's a negative direction, and which means that if the price goes up, then the response will go down. There will be a decrease in response. If we divide these two numbers out and the number is positive, then we said that there's a positive response, meaning as the price goes up, then the response goes up with it. And generally what you'll see is if this is negative, that means the price goes up, there's less being bought, the response is negative. That's generally on the demand side. And if the response is positive, then it's on the supply side. However, let me make this perfectly clear to you. Whether the number is positive or negative, you will record it as a negative. You will record its absolute value and then state that it was a negative response. Okay, again, if you do your calculations and the result is a negative number, you state it as an absolute value and then state that it was a negative response, or it was that the responsiveness or the elasticity, it was a negative elasticity by X number. Okay, now that we have that part done, let's talk through the calculations. Again, we have the percentage change in quantity demand and the percentage change in price. As the price goes up, what we'll see on the demand side is that quantity will go down. So if we were given X P1, a P1 number, and then we said that the price increased by P2, then what would be the responsiveness? Well, at P1, the quantity was Q1. And then what we'll see is that when the price goes from P1 to P2, we'll know what that amount is. And so then what we do is the percentage change between Q1 and Q2 divided by the percentage change between P1 and P2 will give us our price elasticity for demand. Now, real world application. Your boss, you work in the marketing department, and the sales guy comes and says, we're thinking about increasing the price of our product by 12%, or we're thinking about increasing our price by $2. What would be the fallout if we increased our price? Well, you would need to tell the sales guy, well, of course you know that we're going to lose some sales. He knows that. He or she knows that. What they want to know is by how much. That's where the elasticity piece comes in at. So then you could say, well, if you raise your price, if we raise the price by $1, then we could expect X% or X, a number X. And that number X would be the price elasticity of demand. So it would be a negative number. And again, remember from our previous lectures, if the negative number is small, then it means that that product is inelastic and you may decide to go ahead and raise the price. Or if that number is large, then that product is elastic and you might want to think again or think twice about raising the price. Again, we move along the curve. P and Q move in opposite directions, which would make price elasticity negative. And then we'll talk through the positive price elasticity on the supply side in a future lecture. And again, remember, we drop the minus sign, which means we're going to state the absolute value and report it as a positive number. Let's look at our, we've talked about a situation in which you would be asked about a price elasticity of a product. And now let's look at this scenario. Chapter 4, remember that Chapter 4 defines the market. And so now as we define the market, we're looking at changes to the market. And in this instance, the market is website development. And what we're going to do is look at this scenario as an illustration. This website, inside this website market, you own a website design business, and you originally were charging $1,200 per website, and you were selling at 12 websites a month. So if we were doing a demand curve at the price of $200, if you went down from on the demand curve, you go across at 200 and then down to the quantity would be 12. Now your costs are rising and you're trying to figure out whether or not you should raise your price that you charge from 200 to 250. So now you have a change in price from 200 to 250, and then we would calculate what that would mean in terms of lost business from 12 companies or websites a month to what other number. Because we know that the law of demand says that you won't sell all 12. You're going to sell less than 12. So let's take a look. So here we go. We started at 200, and we know that at 200 you were designing 12 websites a month. When we go along that curve, we do a movement, not a shift, because we have a change in price. So we have 250. And at 250, when we go down, we find that we will sell 8 websites a month. So we go from, our change in quantity is from 12 to 8, and our change in price is 200 to 250. So remember our calculation, the change in quantity demand, 8 to 12, divide the percentage change, not the change, but the percentage change from 8 to 12, from 12 to 8, I'm sorry, divided by the percentage change from 200 to 250 will give us our price elasticity. Now, when we're calculating price elasticity, you can do it one of two ways. You can use the standard method or you can use the midpoint method. We're going to look at both. When you do the standard method, basically what you're doing is you're going to take your end value, which is the end value, which is 250, minus your start value, which is 200, and then you're going to divide it by your start value. So 250 minus 200 divided by 200 times 100, that gives you 25%. So your change in price is going to be 25%. So to change your price from 200 and 250, that's a 25% increase. So you are looking at, if I increase my price by 25%, what is the response from my consumers? What is the sensitivity? How sensitive are my customers to a 25% change in price? Now, when we talk about the standard method, one of the problems that we have when we calculate using standard method is that the answer that you're going to get depends upon where you start. So it is possible for two people to have the same set of data and use the standard method to calculate the percentage change and come up with two different answers. That is totally within the realm of possibilities. So if I start from point A to point B, a price rise of 25%, Q is going to fall by 33%. So then our elasticity is 33 divided by 25, and that's 1.33. So what we're saying is that our product for web design is 1.33, which is a relatively low number, which tells us that if we raise our price from 200 to 250, we're going to see some fallout. We're not going to see much fallout. Now that could be because people view our service as a necessity. It could be because there's no close substitute. We don't have much competition where we're at. It could be one of those reasons why the number is low. The other scenario, again using standard method, if we went from 250 to 200, we went from point B to point A, then what we'll see is that price falls by 20%, not 25. We're still using the same calculations, using the same numbers, but our start point was at 250, and we're going, if we dropped our price from 250 to 200. So in the scenario, we said we started at 200 and we're thinking about raising our price. If we flip that and say our start price was 250 and we're thinking about lowering our price to 200, what would be the response? So then if we started at 250 and we're thinking about cutting our price because there's a whole lot of competition, people are not, the economy is bad and people are not using our services, and so we're thinking about cutting our prices to generate more business, to generate more revenue. It works either way. So if we start with a decrease in 20%, then we'll see a rise in quantity by 50%. So we'll take the 50%, because remember, the original calculation is the percentage change in Q divided by the percentage change in P. So it doesn't matter which way we start, the percentage change of Q is always over the percentage change of P. And so what we see here is that price elasticity is 250. So if we were interpreting the data, if we raise our price by 25%, we would expect our consumers we would expect to see a fallout. The elasticity of our service is considered 1.33, meaning we would see a decrease by 33%. Okay. On the flip side, if we decided to lower our price, then we would see a positive increase by 2.5%. That's what we're saying, that our the elasticity is higher. We would expect to see more response if we lower our price than if we raised our price. Okay. The consumers are going to be more sensitive to a price decrease than they will be to a price increase. The second calculation is, we talked about the standard. That was the standard. The second type of calculation for calculating percentage change is what we call the midpoint method. And the easiest way for me to help you remember this is in your statistics class, in your production operations management, you talked about midpoint calculations. This is that same, the concept is the same. And basically what you do is you take your end value minus your start value divided by your midpoint value, multiply it by 100, and it doesn't matter if you start with 250 or if you start with 200, doesn't matter which way you start, your answer is going to always be the same. A lot of people prefer midpoint over standard. It's a personal preference, but the reason why a lot of people like midpoint versus standard is because no matter where you start or stop, the answer is going to always be the same. So as you saw in the previous calculation, if you started at 250 and went down, you got one elasticity, price elasticity for demand, which was 2.5. If you went the other direction, you got a different price elasticity for demand, which was 1.33. Whereas here, when you calculate using the midpoint method, doesn't matter which way you start, it's going to be the same. And our example that we will use here, where is my, there we go. Here we go. So if we use the midpoint method to calculate the percentage change of price, you got 250 minus 200. The midpoint between 250 and 200 is 225. You multiply that by 100, you get 22.2%. And then you take the percentage change in quantity, demand. So you got 12 minus 8. And then the midpoint between 12 and 8 is 10. So 12 minus 8 divided by 10. Multiply that by 100, you got 40%. So then you take 40% divided by 22.2, and your elasticity for demand is 1.8. This concludes the calculation portion of price elasticity for demand. I look forward to speaking to you soon with the next installment of the Chapter 5 lecture. Have a good one.